All right, the latest numbers on the US housing market are officially in, but trust me, the big headline figures don't even begin to tell the real story. So today, we're going to dive into what's actually going on with home prices across the country, and more importantly, what it means for you. And here it is, the big number that's grabbing all the headlines. $426,800. That is the new US median price for an existing single-family home. It's up about 1.7% from last year. But like I said, that single number, it barely scratches the surface. Because, that national average hides a really fascinating split. While the median price did go up, that was not everyone's experience, not by a long shot. In the third quarter, prices climbed in about 77% of metro areas. But that means, if you can believe it, that in nearly a quarter of cities, prices actually went down. The story is way more complex than just one number. So that brings us to the real question, right? The one that's on everybody's mind. What does this all mean for your neck of the woods? Is your part of the country getting pricier, or is it actually getting a little cheaper? Well, to answer that, we've got to look way beyond that national average. Okay, so first things first, let's quickly break down that national snapshot just to get our bearings before we zoom in on all the regional details, because that's where it gets really interesting. So here's the big picture for the nation. That median price hit $426,800, growing at a pretty modest 1.7%. And yeah, prices went up in most places, but look at that last number. Only 4% saw those wild double-digit gains we heard so much about over the last few years. The big takeaway here? The market is still growing, for sure, but it's a whole lot more stable and varied than it used to be. And this right here is where the real story begins. You see, the US housing market isn't just one single thing. It's more like a tale of four very different regions, and each one is kind of moving to the beat of its own drum. And wow, you can really see that divide in this chart. I mean, just look at the median prices. A home in the West costs nearly double what it does in the Midwest. It's crazy. But the really fascinating part is that annual change. You've got strong, healthy growth in the Northeast, solid gains in the Midwest, prices are basically flat in the South, and there's even a slight, tiny dip in the West. And to really put that difference in perspective, check out this price growth. The Northeast is absolutely leading the pack with a 6% jump. The Midwest isn't too far behind either. But meanwhile, the South is just kind of holding steady. And the West, it's the only region that actually saw a small decline. So what on earth is causing such a dramatic split? Well, to understand the why behind all of this, let's turn to the experts. We're going to look at the analysis from the National Association of Realtors chief economist, who gives some really clear reasons for these different stories. So according to Lawrence Yun, it all boils down to two key things: supply and affordability. It's classic economics, really. In the Northeast, there just aren't enough homes for sale to meet demand, and that scarcity drives prices up. And over in the Midwest, homes are still relatively affordable, which is attracting a lot of buyers, and, you guessed it, pushing prices higher there too. So what about the South, where prices have cooled off a bit? Well, the thinking here is particularly interesting. The slowdown is being linked to a lot of new construction and job growth, which actually suggests these price drops might just be temporary. In fact, it's being framed as a potential second chance opportunity for buyers who felt like they were completely priced out before. Now, a home's price tag is one thing, but what you actually have to pay every single month, that's a whole other story. So let's shift gears and talk about affordability and what these numbers really mean for the average person's wallet. And this, my friends, brings us to the affordability crunch. At first glance, you might look at this and think, the monthly payments look almost the same. But the real story, the one that matters, is the percentage of their income. A typical buyer, who probably has some equity from a previous home, is spending about a quarter of their income. But for a first-time buyer, well, it's a completely different world. Let's just let that sink in for a second. 37.4%. That is a massive, massive chunk of someone's income. And it just perfectly highlights the immense challenge that new buyers are facing trying to get a foothold in this market right now. It's tough out there. So where does all this leave us? We've got a market with kind of slow national growth, but these huge regional differences, and this persistent, painful affordability crunch. Let's try to pull it all together and figure out the key takeaways. Okay, so to sum it all up, national prices, yeah, they're still climbing, but the pace has definitely slowed way down. The real action is happening in the Northeast and the Midwest.
Those markets are hot. The South's little cooldown could be a real opening for some buyers. But the bottom line, the thing that affects everyone, is that affordability is still the single biggest hurdle, especially if you're trying to buy your very first home.
Which brings us right back to that idea of a second chance. With price growth slowing down nationally and even dipping in some areas, could this be it? Is this the moment, the opportunity that buyers who've been stuck on the sidelines have been waiting for? Well, that is the big question hanging over the entire market as we head into the next quarter.